When we think about history, we usually think about the big names, right? The famous heroes. But have you ever stopped to wonder about the people who helped make them heroes? Well, sometimes the most important people are the ones working behind the scenes, making sure everyone else can succeed. And today, we're going to talk about one of the absolute best, Ella Baker. And this quote right here, this says it all. This was Ella Baker's whole philosophy. She wasn't interested in being the one big star in the spotlight. Her entire life was about empowering other people, about giving them the tools and the confidence, the light, so they could find their own way forward. Okay, let's get into it.
Yeah, so when you see those famous pictures of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. giving a speech, or those incredibly brave students sitting at the lunch counters, you gotta wonder, right? Who helped organize all that? Who was giving them advice and support behind the scenes? Well, time and time again, the answer was Ella Baker.
So to really get who she was, you have to go way, way back. I mean, this kind of powerful spirit, this deep sense of justice, it doesn't just pop up out of nowhere. For her, it all started when she was just a little girl.
Okay, so get this. Ella grew up listening to stories from her own grandmother about what it was like to be enslaved, and one story really stands out. Her grandmother was actually whipped for refusing to marry a man the slave owner chose for her. Can you even imagine hearing that story as a kid? It taught Ella all about being tough, about having pride, and about standing up for yourself no matter what. And here's the amazing part. Eventually, her grandparents saved up and bought the very same land they were once enslaved on. Just incredible. And even something we might take for granted, like going to high school, was a huge battle for her. See, where she lived, there were no high schools for Black children. None. But was she going to let that stop her? No way. She actually had to leave home, leave her family, just to go to a boarding school so she could keep learning. Right from the start, she showed she would overcome anything for what she believed in. And all that determination, it absolutely paid off. Big time. She didn't just graduate. She was the valedictorian of her class in 1927. And from there, wow, her journey really took off. By 1940, she's a major organizer for the NAACP, and by 57, she's right there helping put together the famous Southern Christian Leadership Conference, the SCLC.
So as she got deeper into the movement, you have to understand, Ella wasn't just some member paying her dues. She was the engine. She was the backbone, doing all the tough, on-the-ground work that makes things happen. But she also had her own powerful ideas about how things ought to run, and they didn't always match up with the folks in charge.
For the NAACP, people literally called her a whirlwind. I mean, she was everywhere, traveling all through the Deep South, which was incredibly dangerous, by the way, recruiting new members, raising money, and just connecting with people. She built this massive network from the ground up, and she was so good at it, she was promoted to National Director of Branches. I mean, that's a huge deal. But this is where she started to run into another kind of obstacle. And this one, it came from inside the movement itself. She started getting really frustrated with how these big organizations were run. It felt like everything was focused on one single, famous leader, while the everyday people, the ones doing the real work, weren't being taught how to lead themselves. And on top of that, there was another huge challenge. Sexism, plain and simple. These groups were run by men, and they often just didn't listen to the women in the room, even someone with Ella's experience and track record. Just to put it in perspective for you, when the SCLC was created with Dr. King, guess how many women were at that first big founding meeting? One. Just her. So did all this stop her? Nope, not even close. If anything, it just pushed her harder. It made her realize she had to fight for a totally different way of leading, a new philosophy for how to create real, lasting change.
And this right here really breaks out her whole idea. It's so clear. On the one hand, you've got this leader-centered model. One big charismatic person at the top making all the decisions, and everyone else just follows along. But Ella, she was all about group-centered leadership. The idea was to share the power, to make sure everyone had a voice, and, this is the most important part, to constantly be developing new leaders from the community.
And this quote, "Strong people don't need strong leaders." Wow, that just says it all, doesn't it? She believed the whole point wasn't to get people to follow you. The point was to help people see the strength they already had.
And this core belief she had in the power of regular people, it was about to have its biggest moment yet, because a whole new generation was about to step up. And this This is where Ella Baker's legacy was truly forged. Okay, so the year is 1960. All across the South, you have these college students, just kids really, who start these sit-in protests. They'd go to a whites-only lunch counter, sit down, and just refuse to leave. It was so brave, and while some of the older leaders were a little hesitant, Ella Baker saw it immediately. She saw their fire, their potential, and she knew right then and there she had to get involved. So what's her first move? She goes straight to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and persuades him to give $800 to the cause. Now, $800 might not sound like a ton of money today, but back then, that was a serious investment. And what was it for? To do something that had never been done before. Bring all of those student leaders from all those different protests together in one room. And this is where her advice was just genius. See, the other big civil rights groups, they wanted these students to just become, their youth wing. But Ella said, no way. She pushed them, encouraged them to form their own independent group, a place where they could call the shots and lead in their own way. And that's precisely what they did. First, Ella organizes this big conference at her old university, Shaw. Then, over 200 student activists show up from all over. From that meeting, they form the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. You probably know it as SNCC. It became one of the most important groups of the entire era. And Ella's role? True to her word, she was their trusted advisor, their mentor, but never their leader. She always helped them see the bigger picture. She told them, look, your fight is much bigger than a hamburger or even a giant-sized Coke. It wasn't just about lunch. It was about dignity. It was about changing America. So when you look back at everything she did, what is the real lasting impact of this incredible woman? Well, it all comes down to this idea of creating leaders. Later in life, people gave her this nickname, Fundi. It's a Swahili word, and it means a person who teaches their craft to the next generation. And honestly, could there be a more perfect word to describe her? She wasn't just doing the work, she was teaching others how to do the work. So her impact is just huge when you think about it. She mentored a whole generation of young people who went on to become famous leaders themselves. She championed this whole model of grassroots, shared leadership that people still use today. And maybe most importantly, she proved, beyond a doubt, that ordinary people have the power to create extraordinary change. So let's bring it all back. Ella Baker was the ultimate hero builder, the hero behind the heroes. She wasn't looking for the spotlight for herself. She was trying to help everyone else find their own light to shine. And that really leaves us with something to think about, doesn't it? Her whole life kind of poses this question to all of us. What does it really mean to lead? Maybe it's not so much about being out front, but about lifting up everyone around you.